Hi friends, Kathy Lanzalacco here with another episode of Inspire Careers Spotlight on Careers, the video podcast series where I interview career management professionals all across the business space to bring you best-in-class information to keep you up to date and help you advance in your careers. And today I have a very special guest who isn't directly related to career services, though dabbles a lot in it because of the work that she does. My guest today is Nicholle Overkamp. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Kathy.
Nicole is owner of Wilcox Financial Services and Powherhouse Money Coaching. Nicole advises people all over the country about financial services, about planning their money spends, about retirement accounts. And she works with a lot of people as they're changing careers and trying to rework their money strategies. So I've asked her to join me today so that we can talk about the impact of being laid off, being out of work for an extended period of time, what that does to you from a mental standpoint in your job search. But also, Nicole is going to share with us her best recommendations about how to handle those pieces of your journey from a financial standpoint. Thanks again, Nicole.
Thanks. Yes, I am super excited to chat about this and give some insight and ideas. And just as a quick disclaimer, anything that I share today is general information. Please, no one take this as personal advice, because when it comes to finances and talking about your money, it really is highly specific. So,
yeah. Oh, that's a great thing. Absolutely. But I will say that as I continue to work with people throughout 2023, I am seeing a bit of a shift in the job market, which I've had other career coaches say this to me, and I have read numerous articles published by the government and other statistics about the job market. It seems like people are taking longer to find jobs, particularly over the past 6 months. And well, they're landing jobs, there's no question about it, but the job market has slowed a bit, particularly in the Western Europe, but all across the country. And with that, people tend to be out of work a little bit longer. But let's start with a couple different scenarios here, because I think a lot of people are going to see themselves in the conversation. So in 2023, I know that I have worked with a lot of people who have come to me to say, look, we are going to be restructuring over the next couple of weeks. I know I'm going to get a severance package, but March 1st is my out date, or whatever it is, and they have some time to plan. Let's talk about those people first, Nicole. When somebody knows that a layoff is coming and they know they're going to have to get another job, whether or not they think they're getting a severance agreement, talk to us a little bit about what you would like to see those people do before they even necessarily hop right back into the job search. What kind of things would you like them to be thinking about and doing from a financial perspective?
absolutely. So the first is take inventory of your personal household finances. So everything that you own and what you owe. So you really want to have solid clarity over the emergency reserves that you have saved up, what's in your savings account or liquid money. So that in the event, and hopefully this doesn't happen, but in the event beyond your severance, you're still looking for a job, do you have some cash in the bank to make sure that you can continue to pay your bills without much of a disruption? And if you have lead time here and you know that maybe it's a couple of months before this happens, I'd strongly encourage you to start squirreling away maybe a little bit more money than normal so that you've got a little bit extra of a runway, because you just don't know what you don't know. And then second to that is really thinking critically about where all your money is going. So right now, if you do have extra debt, maybe some credit card debt, consumer debt is at an all-time high right now, actually, because even though inflation has gone up, prices have gone up, spending behavior hasn't changed a whole lot. So if you are one of those people and you do, again, have some time, maybe work really hard at getting rid of that so that it's not a burden when you go through transition. And then next is analyzing and auditing all your expenses, right? So take a look at where all your money is going, and is there anything that on a temporary basis, so don't think this is like, the nail on the coffin, but on a temporary basis that you can cut out, get rid of, and just streamline. And it's a good practice to do anyways, because how often do you forget you signed up first to a subscription and maybe it was a free trial, but you never canceled it and now you're getting charged for it? Or, that FabFitFun box that you're still receiving in the mail, and every time you get it, you're like, oh, this is really nice, but I don't need this extra junk. So this is a really good opportunity to just cut out all of the extras. And if you're married, have a serious conversation with your partner about what things are going to look like and get on the same page, same team, so that you're both being extra cautious with spending to eliminate any future stress that could occur from a financial perspective.
Yeah. What about the people that are getting a severance? Let's just talk about them, that they know that they're getting a severance, may not know exactly what it is, but they have a formula. Should they be taking different action than people that aren't getting one or getting a minimal one?
So I think the biggest difference is just the caution, right? So for folks who are not getting a severance at all or are very small, you really need to pony up, focus on where everything is going as far as monies, reserves, and so on, to ensure that you're just not going to be in a worse position. And then everybody who's getting a severance, you do have a little bit of extra time there, but still you need to be cautious and aware, because you just don't know where your next job is going to be. And this is a great time too, to take assessment and say, man, what are my transferable skills, right? And thinking about, in my next move, what do I really want to do? And if you have severance, you might have a little bit more time to find that right place, but you really need to know the figures. And another thing too that people forget about sometimes is benefits. So if you are going to be going through a transition, and especially if you do have a spouse, you want to talk to them to see, okay, I may need to jump on your health insurance, for example, or something to that effect. So you want to know what the shift will be, the transition, the paperwork, the cost, so you can prepare in advance for that. And if you are single and fabulous, more on you to be prepared. And then also know, if you have severance, you should be covered a little bit longer, but you may be switching to COBRA, which is more expensive than health insurance, where your employer is providing part of that. Now, if you're single and you're not getting a severance, you may be able to switch on to Marketplace, for example. It might be cheaper from a temporary period of time if you don't have income coming in before you line up your next job. So those are things to think about, in addition to what else might be going away, like, disability, your retirement, and so on. So always good to know all of those little pieces to get your ducks in a row.
That's great advice. What about those people, Nicole, that don't see it coming? That maybe it's a restructuring. They just walk in one day and say, look, everybody's going home. Clear out your desks. Maybe it's a performance issue when you lose your job on the spot. A lot of different scenarios. What about those people that don't have a runway, that are completely surprised? What's your recommendations for them once they get home?
So number one is take a deep breath, right? Do not panic, because panic will perpetuate the problem. And sometimes you do things from an emotional state and not a logical state. And often that comes to spending, right? It's like this short-term thing that we do. And we're like, even if you know it's bad, you do it because it feels good on a temporary period of time, right? Or maybe for some people, it's drinking or what have you. And so you want to have a really good mental state of mind. And so take a deep breath and know that everything will be okay. Everything is figureoutable. And some of the same things, right? Take inventory of everything going on. What can you cancel temporarily, pause, change, tweak, other services that you don't really need. And then maybe it's a period of time too, where you need to ask for help, and that's where people are there to help. But also there's a lot of things, a lot of people actually do need pinch hit help right now. And it's the holidays. So depending on what kind of skill you have, you might be able to help with childcare, babysitting, freelance work in the interim. There's just a lot that you can do. And so instead of taking that victim mentality and kind of getting all up in your feelings, take positive affirmative action. And so really think about, what skills do I possess, and get out there and start making sure that, number one, everybody knows that you're looking, that you're available. List some things in your zone of genius and what you can really do to maybe draw on that income. update your LinkedIn, update your social media profiles, and really make sure that you're up to date. If you aren't sure how to do that, I think I know someone who's an expert here, right? Kathy, I mean, I don't know.
But listen, that's an important thing though, Nicole. Let's talk about that a minute, because that's an investment that a lot of people don't feel that they can afford at that time. Yet I will say that it's an investment that you're making as opposed to that vacation, which is fun. It is an investment in the future to get that better job. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So my question back at anybody saying I can't afford that is, can you afford not to? Right. And I see the same thing when people are anxious or they say, oh, I can't afford financial planning. Right. And it's, can you afford not to? And I think very seldom do we pause and actually ask ourselves, well, what are the other areas that we're spending our money on? And what's that return? What's that return on energy, time, money, life, your return on life? And when you're spending money on something to make your life better in the future, and things that you learn that you will have in perpetuity, it is almost always worth the investment, especially like, and both of those things are very much almost like paying for college. You're investing in something that's going to get you a significant return as long as you show up and you take action, right? There has to be some personal accountability there. And so, regardless of how much it costs, I think, then look at, well, how much are you spending every day on other crap that probably isn't really doing much for you, And can you shift your perspective to, I get to, how can I, versus, oh, this happened to me, I can't, I have to. And that can really help this period of time where you may be feeling a little bit strapped. There's typically a lot more potential ahead of us in what we have the ability to do than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. That's true that we all, many of us fall into that trap to not think that. Let me ask you a question though. When you were just talking about the money piece, what do you think about people that want to tap their 401k during those times when perhaps they just didn't have money saved when the word came down? Or in the next scenario, I was going to ask you about like people that are out of work for an extended period of time. Let's talk about that for a minute. What do you think about typing into retirement accounts? Is there a time and a place for it in the strategy?
I would encourage against it if possible. So now, that's not worth accruing a ton of credit card debt and other things like that, but try to make it a last resort, because if you are under 59 and a half, you're not only stealing from your retirement and your future self, you're going to pay a 10% early withdrawal penalty plus taxes, especially if this is pre-tax money, not Roth money. So that is really important to keep in mind. And again, I think it's easy to, quote unquote, want to stay comfortable and just say, I'll take for my retirement, because that's a future problem. That's not a now problem. And we don't really think about that, right? We are, as human beings, naturally instant gratification people. But most of the time, if you allow yourselves to take this short-term discomfort, it allows for a much easier life down the road. And so when I say that short-term discomfort, again, are you wallowing in some, shame and grief here? Or are you really looking at cutting expenses? Are you seeing where else you can make income on a temporary period of time? Maybe it's swallowing your pride, but really, and you may see it that way, I would say it's more prideful to look at, man, like this is just a season. And this season might be a couple weeks, a couple of months, but I've got this. And as long as you don't panic, you're typically fine. And usually what causes the triggering events for distributions from retirement accounts and things of that nature is panic and inaction. And so you really want to think about that. And then, of course, the day that you find out, you can file for unemployment as well, depending on your severance package. But that's also just a little bit of a Band-Aid, and it's not going to fill the full gap. So you really want to think of all the things that you're going to do. And if you don't need extra income because you have a nest egg, but you're trepidatious about investing in a career coach or someone who can help you get a better job, maybe that's where you do the side hustle work or freelance work to then get the money to pay for that investment. So maybe you don't feel that internal pull so much, and it doesn't matter, you guys, like if you're 22 or 52, like this applies to all of us. And I think sometimes we say like, oh, I shouldn't be here, I'm too old for this, or I'm not, and like that's just a bunch of head trash. Like there's never a too old too soon or whatever. It's really about nope. You are here right now. And how am I going to solve this problem?
Or, ideally, people would be prepared. We all kind of know that. We know to save. We know these things. But of course, life comes up. It gets difficult. To your point, we're putting out today's fires. We're not thinking about tomorrow. I also want to use the opportunity to say, think about not only saving the money, because that's what we're talking about, but thinking about your networking events, thinking about building your network, thinking about taking care of your career on an ongoing basis so that you're not panicking the day you don't have a job and say, well, I haven't touched my resume in 5, 10, 25 years, right? So digging that well before you need it, right? I think that's the statement, to be constantly building your network, serving others, but developing the equity in these relationships so that if you need some help at some point, you can go to these people and ask. Get that LinkedIn profile, make sure it's up all the time. And even when you are employees, when you should be doing the updates and meeting the people so that you don't have to panic, you can just keep moving forward rather than having to take that step back to get your tools updated too. It's just all of these things together that are hard to think about when you're feeling good. You're what I call fat and happy in a job and you don't think it's going away. But I think if COVID has taught us nothing, that no jobs are guaranteed. I not that they ever were, but I think now people are recognizing they really have to be more proactive about managing their own careers and their financial lives that go with that.
That is such a brilliant point, Kathy. And I think, the power of networking, but staying relevant and not getting complacent is significant. Even if you love your job, you have to keep your network thriving. And actually, quick little plug here for the summit that we're doing March 8th next year in 2024. But one of the topics that the speaker is speaking of is the significance of your personal brand, growing your personal brand. And that's not just on social media, but that is also when you're networking and in these different events, because you just don't know. And it's almost like, on the employer side, we always say, hey, stack your bench for when you have an employee leave or quit. And it's like for you as the employee, stack your bench. Have this network of individuals, whether they're leaders or business owners, where you can tap into if you decide, number one, to change careers in the future, or number two, you lose your job. You've got people to tap into to say, hey, are you still looking to maybe terminate your C players? I am an A player. What do you have open? Because a lot of jobs too, and Kathy, you can attest to this, aren't always posted. So it's, again, who you know, how you can talk to them about how fabulous you are.
Yeah, it's a great thing when you talk about the summit, and I will be there next year myself. I have signed up for that. And, some people say, well, I don't know what I'm doing next year, whether it's this summit, whether it's something else. Think about for 2024, whether you're watching this, whatever month you're watching this throughout that year, think about what else can I do going forward? How can I plan for this week, this month? Maybe set a goal for yourself. I'm going to do a networking event a quarter, whatever it is, but doing those kind of things, just like you think, well, how much money am I going to have taken out of my check every week for my 401k or for out of my account for IRAs or whatever it is, it should be that built-in practice. But Nicole, let me ask you this too. For people that are out of work an extended period of time that really now are down on their savings, I know they are starting to panic because they tried not to at first, but now it's gone on 6 months. Now they have some extenuating circumstance. What's your best recommendation for those folks?
I think, again, are you doing any kind of side work, anything like that? And when you are networking, by the way, that is also an opportunity to say, hey, who do you know that needs help in all these different areas? I can do this, even if it's as much as like running errands. I mean, and there's like, you can go on to freelance.com, or there's tons of articles. We actually have some, Kathy, I can share them with you, like things that you can do, whether it's Uber driver or whatever. But also, maybe you can get creative and crafty. Maybe you house sit for a month and Airbnb your house and make some income that way, depending on where you live and your comfort level there. But that can be brilliant. I mean, you can make a few $1,000s a month by renting out your house, and maybe you can go somewhere else for free. I mean, of course, this depends on kids and your scenario and so on. However, there's a lot of ways that you can do very creative things to get through a crunchy period of time, as long as you, again, allow yourself to not shut down, but really expand and say, hey, how can I make this work right now? And what are some of the things that we can do?
What you're talking about is a bridge job, folks, right? So it may not be your permanent gig, but if you need to get that income in, think about other creative ways. You may have to take a customer service job. You may have to take something in retail, whatever it is. There's no shame in that. That's just building the bridge to the next opportunity while you look, right? But the bills still need to get paid. So that can be a really great strategy. Nicole, we're almost up on our time here, but I want to turn this around a little bit. I work with a lot of recent college grads, and they are landing fabulous jobs, some of them pretty significant money. So what is your recommendation to those young folks just starting out with their first real jobs? And let's assume they're all over 21 because they've graduated from college. And what is your best recommendation to start setting themselves up for long-term financial success? Because at 22, 24, they are not thinking about retirement. They're probably, not thinking about anything, maybe student loans, but what do you think they should be doing? What are your recommendations?
Get a plan. Of course, I'm just kidding. Yeah, get a plan. If there's one investment you're going to make in yourself and your future, really do that. But think about not just right now, but your future self. And so there is such a good blend that you can do all the things that you want to do right now, as well as make your future self proud. And so it's really going through your cash flow, knowing where your money is going, and just ultra intentional, right? And yes, you can have a travel fund. You can have your emergency reserve fund. I know a lot of the younger generation is highly, highly concerned about being able to travel quite a lot. And that's okay. It's a beautiful thing. That there's ways to set monies aside for that. Make sure you're taking advantage of all your employer benefits. And more importantly, you understand them. That is a huge thing that I see go overlooked, where young folks will say, oh, I don't need disability. I opted out of that. Well, when you're young, the biggest thing you want to protect is your paycheck. That's what disability insurance does. So, making sure you're taking advantage of your 401k match if your employer matches you and saving into that. And knowing that you have, a reserve set aside, and all of those little moving parts, you guys, are really important. And asking the questions to be educated on this stuff. So not being intimidated. There's no rule book or college degree on finance and money. And quite frankly, money is its own language, and it's a language we need to learn, whether that's mindset wise, how we deal, cope, and act around money, but then also the technical pieces, the terms and everything else, and really making sure that you have a thorough understanding of that so that you can have this power to hold with you right now. And then of course, for the rest of your lives. And for those of you who are young and maybe you do have a partner or you're starting to get serious now, the most important thing that you can do for your relationship before getting married is have that money conversation too, and understanding where both of you are, knowing how much debt you each have, and maybe it is student loans or anything else, and just being open and honest about it so that you can really be a dynamic duo and not have that be something you argue about in the future in your relationship. And we don't give money enough credit to how deeply vulnerable and emotional it can be. And so, the more that you talk about it, the easier it becomes. And being open, and the more conversations we have about money and learn about this stuff, the less I think, mystery there will be behind it, and just allowing you to really take more ownership in that and build wealth easier.
And, the young people that I work with, overwhelmingly, they're still living with their parents because they've recently finished school, or maybe they're a year or two out. And it's very difficult for young people to get out on their own nowadays with the cost of rent or trying to buy a home. It's kind of crazy out there. But it's really a great opportunity when you have that first job, you're still living at home, maybe you're even covered under your parents' health insurance, to really start. You've got that privilege, that opportunity to really start making some plans, socking away the money, figuring out more long-term, maybe putting more money away in your retirement than you would be able to do when you're 30 and have a family. Now is the time, because you're always talking about that compounding money, right, for that long-term. So there's some of those really great strategies that they could just set themselves up for success they don't even think about right now.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, look, guys, the more you start saving earlier, the less you have to save later on. Yeah. Slow, gradual over time, you'll be so grateful later on, versus being in your 40s or 50s and saying, holy cow, I have to save 40% of my income because I didn't do those things later. Or you went through a life change or anything like that. You know, for some folks, maybe who just went through a divorce, like you may be feeling like you're starting over. And look, at the end of the day, the underlying theme here in this entire podcast is that everything is figureoutable and something better is always ahead. However, you know, we just have to be very real about when you have opportunities, make sure that you're leveraging them and that you're taking them and always putting yourself in a position to be good now and later.
All right. I can't say anything other than that because that's perfect. And we are going to leave it here today. Thank you very much, Nicole Overkamp of Wilcox Financial Services and Powherhouse Money Coaching for sharing your insights today about folks on the journey for career management, being out of work, and certainly those young new grads we just talked about in setting up themselves for financial success. But again, if anybody takes anything away from this, I want you to hear Nicole's last words. Everything is figureoutable. So it may take a little bit of time. It's going to take some strategy. But today is just, what did you call it, Nicole? It's just a season, right? It's just where you are today. And tomorrow, there is more opportunity there. So if you'd like to talk to Nicole, we're going to drop her information when we post the podcast. You're welcome to reach out to her. But please remember that the financial piece goes hand in hand. Your career is the largest driver of your income in most cases. So they should be going hand in hand in terms of your planning. Thank you, Nicole, for joining us today. And until we see each other again on Inspire Career Spotlight on Careers, live inspired.